In this lesson, we're going to continue discussing character panel formatting. If you'd like to follow along, go under the File menu to Open, and in the Working Files folder, go into Chapter number 6 and select Character Formatting, and just click Open. Now, if you still have your document open from the last lesson, go under your File menu to Revert. And that will close the document and reopen it with none of the changes that you made. Before we get going, go to your zoom tool. You can hit your Z key to get there very quickly, and just click and drag across the width of the page to make it much bigger in the window. Let me go to my type tool. In the last lesson, we left off with kerning, which makes the space between the characters equal. Why don't we select the third paragraph and change from metric kerning to optical kerning. The next field to the right is called tracking. Tracking takes the equal spacing and makes it tighter or looser. So if I were to click my down arrow next to tracking, it's -10, -20, -30. And you can see it's getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Now, if you're switching from Quark Express, these numbers probably seem rather strange to you. InDesign's tracking numbers are 5 times greater than Quark's. So a -25 in InDesign translates into a -5 in Quark. The next two fields have to do with vertical and horizontal scale. This is a way of distorting your type to make it look more condensed or expanded. In a lot of places that I do training, I do not talk about this. Many artists are type purists. They will not distort the type from what the type designer had originally intended. Let me show you why. I'm going to go to horizontal scale, and in the pop-up menu, just choose 25%. And you can see, let me zoom in a little bit. The type has been squished to 25% of its original width. This not only makes it illegible, the look of the type has nothing to do with the original design. So, not a great thing to go too far with horizontal or vertical scale. Let me go back up to, let's say, 90%. That is slightly distorted in the width to 90% of the original width. It probably is acceptable to go to 95%, 90%, or even 85%. Much beyond that, and it starts to look like a different typeface. Let me go back up to 100%. And talk for just a second about vertical scale. I never use vertical scale. Let me show you why. I'm going to go to the pop-up menu immediately to the right of the vertical scale field, and I'm going to choose 200%. Well, that's a problem. It scaled the type up and down vertically, but it didn't change the leading. So the type from one line is running into the type in the next line, up or down. Not a good thing. Let me go back down to 100% and continue. I'm going to zoom out a bit by hitting Command- on a Mac, Control- on a PC. And I want to get down to about the width of my page fitting in the window again. And I'm going to go back to my type tool and just click and drag across my headline at the top. I want to change the typeface of this headline. I'm going to go to the character family name and just highlight it and type in TIMES, times. And if you're on a Mac, you're going to choose Times Regular. If you're on a PC, choose Times New Roman. And I'm going to insert a special character. I'm going to go under my type menu to insert special character, symbols registered trademark symbol. And you can see I get this humongous circle R, the registered trademark symbol. So generally what people will do is use something called superscript. You'll find it in your control panel with the rest of what I call the big T features. It's a T with a little 1 raised up and made smaller. And watch what happens when I click on that. It makes the register mark much smaller. I'm going to zoom in. Now, let's just assume for a minute that this is part of a really large headline, and the register mark is still too big. Let me go back to my type tool. I'm going to make it smaller. So I'm going to click the down arrow next to the point size field to make it smaller and smaller and smaller. And when it feels about the right size, let's say about 10 points, well, now it's in the wrong position. It's not going up high enough from the baseline of the type. It's an imaginary line that all of the type sits on. So I'm going to use this next feature called baseline shift. It's shifting the baseline of the type up. And why don't we do it to, how about 3.5 points? So I just typed in 3.5 and I'm going to hit enter or return. And you can see the register mark is now lining up with the top of the ascenders of the type. That's the part of the type that ascends above what is called the X height, which is the smaller letters like E, A, I, N, and E. So that is what baseline shift is used for. I've seen it used for a lot of other things. Most of them are not good things to do. Let me show you. I'm going to fit my page in the window again by hitting Command or Control 0, and I went out a bit too far, so let me go to my zoom tool and just click and drag across the width of my page. Let's say I had a line of type, and I felt like, let's say my second subhead here was too far away from these other lines of type right above it. Well, what some people will do is click their up arrow next to baseline shift, and let me do that. Well, that looks pretty good. This is not what baseline shift is for, and it's probably not a good thing to do. Let me show you why. Let's say I used baseline shift to shift this line upwards, and I save the file and I open it 6 months from now to make changes. And I come to this line and I need to select the word second. Oh, wait a minute, what's going on? It's not letting me select the word second. So basically what's happening is because I use baseline shift, the type is really down here. That's where I would have to select it. So you can see why this is not a good thing to do. It can be really confusing. I'm going to select a word in my headline. And let's say I wanted to make it italic. Let me do that. I'm going to go to italic in the style pop-up menu, and I have italic. Great. But let's say I needed to make a word italic, and I thought that the italic style was just too fancy for what I was trying to do. Or possibly the typeface that I'm using doesn't have italic. Let me zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to go to my zoom tool and just click and drag across a couple of these words in my headline and go back to my type tool. If I don't have italic, or this italic style is just too fancy, I can go to something called false italic or skew. And I'm going to click the up arrow, and you can see it's actually tilting the type. And when I get to about 10%, it could pass as italic. Is it italic? No. The characters are totally different than the actual italic that's to the right. But if you really need italic and it doesn't exist, it's a great way to do it. One last thing in the character panel is language. And if I click on the language pop-up, you're going to see that there are over 40 different languages that are listed here. But don't get excited. InDesign will not translate for you. What it is doing is it's using the dictionary of whichever language you choose. So you could use spell check. And also, it's hyphenating the words according to the rules for hyphenation in that particular language. In the next lesson, we're going to continue talking about type formatting.